On this week's podcast, I am talking with my friend and fellow licensed Reiki Master teacher with the ICRT, Tracey Sullivan. Welcome, Tracey.
Hi, Pam. Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. And we are talking about such an interesting subject today. I hope you love it. We're talking about the synergy between Reiki and human design. I recently attended Tracey's presentation at the Northeast Reiki Retreat in New York about human design. And as soon as I heard it, I said, we have to put this on my podcast. You said something during that presentation, Tracey, that really stood out to me. And as Holy Fire Reiki practitioners, we are working to uncover the authentic self. And you talked about how human design shows us who our authentic selves are. And you believe that Reiki helps us move through that. And I know you're going to get into that a little bit in the podcast, but I thought that was fascinating and just knew we had to have you here.
Yeah, thanks, Pam. Yeah, I think it's fascinating too. So thanks for having me here to talk about it.
Oh my God, I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled. And before we begin, I just want to let you guys know that we have some animal Reiki classes coming up in the beautiful Campobello. I'm actually recording from there today, and unfortunately the lighting, it's so bright out on the water that's just out there. For those of you watching in video, it doesn't really let me show how beautiful it is very easily, but I will try to maybe get a glimpse before the end of our session today. But the animal Reiki classes are amazing from here. We do go out whale watching, but sometimes the whales even show up in class. We can actually see them out the living room window. And I had a little bit of difficulty in my very first class keeping everybody's attention because the whales were just playing and frolicking out in the bay in front of us. And they were so excited about the Reiki that they just all day were there, which is unusual. Usually we just see them for
Wow.
a little bit and then they move on. And the day of the Reiki class, the whales, the porpoises, they stayed, even some seals, and they stayed right in front of the window all day.
So amazing, Pam.
So amazing. So if you would like to join us, the July class coming up is really fun. Yeah, Tracey might be there. I hope so. I'm trying to convince her. The July class is going to be interesting. The weekend class is the level 1 and 2 class is over the weekend, but the master class I'm doing in the evenings for our Australian and Asian students. And so it will be, both classes are both online and in person, although you may not see the whales if you're online, I'm afraid, but we will try to bring you to the window, try to let you know if they do show up. And so the master class is going to be a little different. It's over 4 evenings that the Australian students can join. So please join us if that speaks to you. If you do come in person, that means it gives us all day to go out and explore, go to Eleanor's Tea, learn a little bit about Eleanor Roosevelt and visit the Roosevelt cottages, and maybe hike some of the trails, see some of the beautiful beaches here on the island. There's beaches everywhere. Collect some sea glass, check out the library, which Franklin Roosevelt was on the library board, even as the president of the United States, of the Campobello Library. He was on the library board, and he and Eleanor participated in fundraising activities to try to raise the funds to create this sweet little library that's here, the library that probably has the best view of all of North America. The chairs outside look right out onto the bay. So join us if that speaks to you. We do have some classes in regular time as well in September. And then in October, I've got a full list of classes happening at the farm. So hopefully you'll join us. I also want to ask a favor. If you have read the Reiki Business book, could you or would you consider going on to Amazon and leaving us a review? We have some 5 stars and I think 1 4-star for the Reiki Business book so far, but there aren't a lot of people who've left written reviews. So we would really appreciate it if you would do that. And before we go too much further, I'm just going to invite everybody to put your hands together, and we're going to activate our Reiki energy today. So with your hands together in Gasho, just closing your eyes, taking a deep breath and activating your Reiki energy. Bringing in all of your symbols. And just in appreciation for the synergy that does exist between Reiki and human design, and what we're going to learn today about how each of us is uniquely structured and how we can learn more about that. We invite our authentic selves to the surface today, and if there are aspects of our culturally created self or of our dormant self, which is the part of us we don't like, and so we've pushed down, and the culturally created self is what we were taught or who we were trained to be. If there are aspects of our culturally created self or our dormant self that no longer serve us and that are preventing us or blocking us from being our authentic selves, we just let those go today. And as Tracey talks, I think some of you are going to gain more and more understanding at the cerebral level or the conscious level of who you are and how you function. And so as that happens, and as we recognize aspects of ourselves that are not serving, we invite Reiki to release them for us with love. Thank you for being here today and for the light that you spread in the world. Mahoma Takwio Asan. Namaste.
Namaste. Thank you, Pam.
Thank you, Tracey. Tracey, I was fascinated by your presentation. In fact, I used the word riveted when I mentioned it to you before. Absolutely riveted by everything you had to say about human design. And you talked about how it really spoke to you as well and caused you to really want to dive into it. And you really found that beautiful synergy that existed between the two modalities, and that human design can really help us understand how we function. So that I loved the example you gave. You talked about how you always tried to function as a generator, but it was exhausting and it didn't really work for you. And when you discovered that, in fact, you're a projector, you realized that you needed to shift and change how you do things. And as you do, you move more into alignment with your life purpose and more into alignment with the universe. And the universe then can move you in the directions that you're supposed to go in. I just found it all fascinating. Tracey, I am just going to turn the floor over to you and ask you to tell us and share with us your wonderful presentation. And for those of you listening today, I am going to put a link to the PowerPoint in our, or to the, yes, to the PowerPoint and also to the YouTube video, so that you might be able to follow through with Tracey and look at the PowerPoint as she goes through, because this is fascinating work. So I'm going to turn the floor over to you, Tracey, and just ask you to tell us a little bit about human design and also any courses that you have coming up.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Pam. Again, it's great to be here. And I too am fascinated by this. And I'm so fascinated by the interconnectedness of Reiki and human design, how it has manifested in my life. And yes, the shifts that have happened in my life because of that interconnectedness of the two of them. So I'll first tell you about the classes I have coming up. I have a Reiki 1 and 2 and a master class that are, this is the first time I'm doing this, Pam. I'm teaching Reiki 1 and 2 and master together. So it's a 5-day class, and that's in August. I don't know the exact dates. And I'm also teaching a Karuna Reiki class in August. I
Nice.
will be scheduling a class that I've created and I've taught probably 2 or 3 times now, called Energy Integration. And that class is all about a more in-depth experience about human design and Reiki. So I offer it to all my Reiki 1 and 2 students for free as an addition to the Reiki 1 and 2 class. And I actually included it in my class that I just taught at Lake George. And that was the first time I did it, incorporated into a class, and it went really well. The combination of Reiki and human design, I think, really helped the students to move forward in the Reiki energy in a more individual way, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That I don't have the next one scheduled yet, but for all of your viewers of your podcast, once I do have that scheduled, and it should be by the time that this is posted, I'll give you the link and they're welcome to join that for free.
What?
Uh,
Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
yeah.
Tell you, I
So
would like to join it.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's online, of course. It's 4 hours. And like I said, when I schedule that, I offer it to free for my students. And anybody that watches this and is interested, if it sparks your interest, you're welcome to join it.
My goodness, Tracy, that's
Yeah,
generous of you. And I
yeah,
sure hope that I'm available because I really want to take that class.
yeah. I'm excited about it every time I teach it. And every time I talk about this, it becomes a little bit different. The way that I want to talk about something a little bit before I share my PowerPoint. One of the first things I'll talk about in the PowerPoint in the presentation is the history of human design. What is human design? And this part is not in the PowerPoint, but as I become more integrated in this, I realize that human design is about decision making. And it can show you how to consistently make the right choices in your life. And that is, if you think about it, the choices that we make are bringing us to any situation that we happen to be in our life. It has occurred to me that decision making is a huge part of human design. So it's a way of allowing your body's intelligence to guide you instead of the mind, because the mind is the outer authority. And we all have our own inner authority, which is how we should be making decisions. But often, most of us will allow our mind to continue to make decisions for us. So making decisions based on what's fixed and reliable in you, as opposed to making decisions from your mind, will bring you to that place that is authentic for you. And in Holy Fire Reiki, we call that the authentic self. So it is a way of bringing us to our authentic self. So making decisions based on that part of us within us, which I'll review like how that's different for everybody. There's variations of that. And once we learn the correct way of decision making for us, we can start to implement that in our life, and it will start to change our lives right away. So the mind is always influenced by outside conditioning and doesn't really reflect what our uniqueness is. And human design can show you how to live as yourself. Even though it's very practical and it's in its application, human design, that is, it really is a very spiritual and deep practice. Underneath all the practicality, there is it's very deep, and you can get very deep into this. But the beautiful thing about it is that you don't have to. Just simply starting to implement your strategy and authority, which is all about decision making, can help to change your life. So the origins are similar to how Yasui Sensei received the gift of Reiki. So human design was received by a Canadian,
Wow.
another wonderful Canadian, in a mystical way. So at this point, let me see, I'll share my PowerPoint. Here it is. Reiki and Human Design, navigating the journey of self-discovery and healing. So this is what I've covered in the presentation, the origin, which I just shared a little bit about that, an introduction to human design system. So the human design system is a synthesis of existing modalities. So with any synthesis, the end product is something different from the individual things that it has come from. So neutrinos and crystals of consciousness, and I'll talk a little bit about these as we go through the presentation. Astrology, the I Ching, the Book of Changes, one of the first books ever written. Genetics, the chakras, and the Kabbalah, where Reiki fits in everywhere. So I'll talk about that a little bit. In my experience with Reiki and Human Design, they're the same for me, and the outcome of implementing each in my life has been very similar. So your design is your authentic self. So especially with Holy Fire Reiki, and in Holy Fire Reiki, those of you who have practiced it know that the authentic self is a huge part of that practice. And in human design, that's what we're talking about, the authentic self. When I show you the body graph, I'm showing you a picture of the authentic self. And everybody has an authentic self that is different from everybody else. So when we learn that we are not supposed to be doing things the same way that everybody else is, we're all here to do something different from each other. So there's no competition. If you see somebody doing something and you really wish that you were able to do that, then in human design, that is the not self and the mind talking. And in Holy Fire Reiki, that would be either the dormant self or anything other than the authentic self. So living your design, type, strategy, and authority, and just by simply implementing these three things into your life and not knowing any of the stuff that I'm talking about, you can really make major changes in your life. And then I'll show a couple of some charts at the end. So I hope that this was like an hour at the retreat. So I'll go through this a little bit faster, Pam, because I know that the time span is a little bit shorter than that. Speaking about human design and Reiki, a little bit about how I came upon human design. I first encountered it in a Reiki class in 2018. So one of my students in a Reiki class on our lunch break, we were teaching in person at the time, she was talking about human design. We're all sitting around eating lunch, and she told me, "You're a projector." And I was like, "Oh, I'm a projector." And I looked into it and I was interested in it for a little while. And then I got busy and didn't really think about it until about a year later when it came up again. And the second time it came up, for some reason, it just really drew me in, and I started to really study it, and I started taking classes. So I've been through 3 basic classes, and I'm in a professional level training to become an analyst. That's my goal. My goal with human design is to become an analyst and fully integrated into my Reiki practice. So first, one must investigate human design inwardly. So before I can implement this and try to help other people with their lives, I need to implement it into my own life. I need to investigate it internally, and just to go into kind of like a research on my own to see how it behaves in my own life, and to see how by not following my design, what happens when I'm not following it, just to understand what it is in my own life and with my own design. So you are your own inner authority. Give your authority over to no one. So with human design, just like Reiki, this is not something that especially, I guess, with both Reiki and human design, it's the inner authority that is being promoted, and nothing about an outer authority has anything to do with either Reiki or human design. So it is not, don't go by what human design is saying. Don't go by anything you learn from reading about human design, because there's a ton of information that you could learn through human design. But until you implement it in your life and start practicing it, then it's going to be meaningless, and you won't understand what that means to be, as in referencing human design anyways, what using your own inner authority actually feels like. So when I speak to you, it's important that I speak as myself. So what that means, what I mean by that is to be able to talk about human design and my experience with human design and Reiki in my own words from my own experience. Because if I'm talking about it by reading what somebody else wrote, the words themselves are nothing compared to the experience that one can have. So I have to come from my own inner authority in order for those words to be received by another, where it feels like it's truthful and authentic. So it doesn't require that you believe in anything, just like Reiki. It doesn't require that you believe it, that it's real, that it works. It is going to work regardless of what your mind says or what you think. It's a logical way to see ourselves. The body graph that you'll see that's in the PowerPoint, if you look at that body graph, and there's links on the last page of the presentation to where you can download your own human design chart for free. And there's tons of free information out there. So all you need to know is when you look at your chart, you'll see your strategy and your authority and what type you are. And it's showing you a blueprint of who you are. And it's the science of differentiation. So it shows us, when I was talking about how we're all here meant to be different from each other, this is showing us what those differences are, how we are different, and how we can manifest that in our lives. So I have this picture here of Ra. He's the creator of human design. It came through him through a mystical experience. And you all, I think, probably recognize this other guy to his side, Yusui Sensei, the founder of Reiki. And I actually asked both of them because I was a little at first like nervous about integrating these two modalities, even though for me it's just very natural. Something about it was a little scary for me. So I asked Sensei and, excuse me, Ra, about doing this. And they were both very much for it. Here we are. So the origin, I talked a little bit about what human design is, and the origin of it is mystical, Reiki and Yusui's experience. And like I said, it's this man here, Canadian Alan Robert Krakauer. He was living on a tiny island off of Spain. The island was called Ibiza. He had a very full life. Like Yusui, he was guided to do something different. So what Alan's guidance was to just go to this island and just be still and leave his fast-paced life. So that happened in 1983, and he wasn't heard from again until January of 87. Wow. And two things happened in 1987 while Ra was living on Ibiza. First, he had this shocking encounter with what he calls the voice that penetrated him for 8 days and nights. The voice told him how the universe functions, and he was given the human design system. So the amazing thing, a couple of the amazing things about this whole experience that he had was that he was given this information, and it's scientific information that at the time had not been proven yet. And that's one of the things that really fascinated me about this, is that he was given this information in a scientific way about science that hadn't been proven yet, and it's been proven since then. So the first prediction, and two of these, there's many of them, but the two that I'm focusing on here is the first prediction by 1998, scientists proved that neutrinos are capable of leaving an imprint. So neutrinos are during the decay of radiation, and that's what's happening with stars. So we see stars because it's radioactive decay. So it's light that we're seeing. And as it's decaying, it's giving off that light. And a part of the byproduct of that are neutrinos. And neutrinos are constantly streaming through to the earth and everywhere all the time. So the second prediction, on September 4th, 2009, the scientific community announces the observation of magnetic monopoles. So a magnetic monopole, like a magnet, usually has two poles, and it was thought until 2009 that all magnets had two poles. So they were finally able to confirm that there is such thing as a magnetic monopole. So it just has a north or south pole. So from 87 to 2011, after he had this experience, so the first few years, he really didn't share it with very many people because he actually wasn't sure that he had not lost his mind, as he puts it. So he was nervous that he wanted to practice with people and to really integrate himself in what he calls experiment. He wanted to experiment with the information before he started to implement it really into society. So from 87 to 2011, he dedicated his life to sharing this knowledge with the world after he practiced it in his own experiment. So this is the synthesis of science and ancient disciplines to see and know the interconnectedness of all patterns and disciplines. So he was given this synthesis, which is more like two aspects of science: the ancient systems of astrology, the Chinese I Ching, the chakras, the tree of life from the Kabbalist tradition, in addition to genetics and quantum mechanics. In addition to that, the DNA and astrology. So all these things that are listed here are a part of the synthesis of the human design system. And again, like any synthesis, the product is greater than each of the parts. So it's not like they're just being put together. It's actually a new system that's being created. And Pam, if you have any questions as I go along, don't hesitate to stop me because I can't see you two talking.
No problem, Tracey. No, I'm fascinated. So I'm just going to listen, but I will.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
yeah, sure. So one other thing I'd like to bring Reiki into this again before I go on with neutrinos. So Reiki, human design, like I think I said already, it's not a belief system. It doesn't require that you believe in anything. And it's independent of ego. It shows us only what will lead us back to our authentic self. So I just want to keep tying the Reiki and human design in together so we don't forget the whole purpose of this is to present two different systems that for me really have become a synergy in my life. And so I have a quote here from Ra that I just want to read real quick. So human design offers a mechanical understanding of the nature of being. With understanding comes a genuine revolution, the realignment of a life and the awakening of awareness. Human design offers a methodology uniquely tailored to your design that liberates you from not self-conditioning. It's called strategy and authority, and it is the catalyst of transformation. Most important to recognize is that this is knowledge to be experimented with, as he did the first few years after this information was given to him. There is a way, but it can only be your way. So we each have our own individual way. Allow this work to guide and inform you, and then, if it's correct for you, follow your own authority, enter into the most extraordinary journey of your life. And I can tell you that I have entered the most extraordinary journey of my life, and it's been Reiki that's brought me to this process. And I won't go into that because that's a whole other story about how this all goes back to the time when Reiki found me and the circumstances. But I'm going to get back to the PowerPoint. So the second extraordinary event, I said the two extraordinary events that happened in 1987. So the first one was that Ra was given this information. The second extraordinary event was seen with the naked eye from an observatory in Chile, a supernova, the death of a star. And here is the picture of it, supernova 1987A. So these are all factual things that I'm talking about that actually happened. So that star bombarded our planet with subatomic information. For 14 minutes, everyone on Earth received 2 times as many neutrinos as normal. And the fact that we do receive neutrinos on a continual basis, that flow of energy from the stars, is scientifically proven. That is a fact. So I just want to reiterate that so I can ground you in the scientific information, and as it integrates with the more esoteric spiritual part of this, because it's like they've come together and integrated the physical and the spiritual. So for 14 minutes, everyone received this extra neutrino flow. So the significance of that is that because of that, that is what prompted Ra receiving that information. We all received that, the essence of that during this time. We did not receive the information. It's Ra that received the information. And by the way, Ra became his name after he had this experience. So even though it was downloaded into all of us in 1987, it was Ra who brought it out verbally, who communicated it. And by the way, he's a manifester. So I'll talk more about what a manifester is. He has direct connection to the throat, which is where how we manifest things, how we communicate things out into the world. So Ra is the person that has communicated this out to the world. So physicists say that our universe began around 14 billion years ago. Prior to that, everything that had mass existed in a particle smaller than an atom, which just truly amazes me every time I read that. The particle ignited and the universe began to expand, dividing into 2 families. So that's where duality began. So we had the mass on one side, the neutron and the proton, and that contains 6 types. And then we have pure energy on the other side, also containing 6 types, 3 electrons and 3 neutrinos. So the first prediction was by the voice, and the first prediction by the voice was realized. In 1995, scientists proved neutrinos are not pure energy because they bear a small amount of mass and travel 1 to 2% slower than the speed of light. C2 is the speed of light. So prior to this, and this is one of the things that Ra was told in 1987 during his experience. And as it turns out, science thought that these neutrinos were pure light. So they couldn't carry information. They'd had no mass. And they were able to, in 1995, prove that neutrinos have a small amount of mass and they travel a very slightly less speed than the speed of light. So they cannot be pure light. They have mass, they can carry information, and they do carry information. So neutrinos are the breath of stars. So when we talk about humans being the breath of stars, it's really true. So even if the people that speak of that don't know about human design, that is such a beautiful truth, that the way that we are created is through the breath of stars. And it's this neutrino field that is flowing, that is the result of the radioactive decay of a star. And I'm a nuclear medicine technologist, so this is such a divine, when I think about the day I decided to go into nuclear medicine, it was just so divinely, I don't know, just it seems like a divine intervention somehow at this point.
Thanks,
Because
Tracey.
what I do, and now I actually teach physics and nuclear medicine, and I understand how radioactive decay works. And it's the same thing with our solar system. And I know that I have a relationship with those neutrinos. I had a standing relationship with the neutrinos for a long time. So I understand how it works. And it makes total sense to me. That is flowing through to us on a regular basis, constantly flowing. And you can see it, this little chart I have here, everywhere all the time. That's a big number there. centimeters per second. So that many neutrinos per centimeter per second. That is the flow of neutrinos
What's
through
that number?
everything.
66,
It's
160 billion?
it's huge.
It's a huge number.
It's a huge number. So if you kind of look at this chart, you have the yin and the yang, a way of looking at this, and you have the neutron and the proton and the electron and the neutrino. So you have like mass and then you have energy.
Yeah.
The atom is 10% of the mass of the universe. Everything else is that dark matter, and it's that neutrino field flowing through. So yes, everything comes down to the atomic level, but it's even more than that, even though it's part of that atomic level. So neutrinos really are the breath of stars. There are more neutrinos than any other form of matter. The sun, our sun, produces 70% of the neutrinos that pass through the Earth. The rest come from other stars and planets. In our galaxy, Jupiter makes up about 3% of the neutrino stream that flows through us. This information field is penetrating us all the time.
So what about on a cloudy day, Tracey?
It doesn't matter.
Okay.
It doesn't matter. Just like with radioactive decay,
yeah,
it goes through anything. It doesn't matter if it's cloudy. It doesn't matter. None of that stuff matters with the neutrino field.
okay.
And Pam, I think that neutrino field, and this is just me saying this. I haven't read this anywhere. There's no proof of this, but I feel like that neutrino field is Reiki. It's Reiki coming through. Yep. Because it's always there. Yasui Sensei said that Reiki is everywhere all the time.
Yeah.
This is everywhere all the time. Again, I can't prove that. I'm just saying that from my own thoughts. So one of the other things that is a part of this is the crystals of consciousness. And I have this body graph down at the bottom here because it's these crystals of consciousness that create this body graph. And let me just stick to the PowerPoint. Crystals of consciousness, according to the voice, the universe was conceived at the Big Bang. That means the universe is one single living entity, not yet born. So think about that. In the beginning, there was a yin egg containing all the material of the universe. This egg contains something best described as crystals. Obviously, they're not like real crystals, but they had a crystalline quality to them. So there was also a yang seed that contained another crystal-like structure. So when the yin and the yang met, the crystals shattered into zillions of aspects and spread throughout the expanding universe. So with the crystals of consciousness, you have the personality crystal, and if you can see the chart there, I'm not sure if it would depend on how big your computer screen is to see if you can see, like one side's red, the left side's red, and the right side is black where the numbers are. So the personality crystal is the right side, is a reflection of your personality, and your personality is that right side, the black. And I know this might not make like total sense to you, and that's okay. It'll make a little bit more sense once we get through a couple more slides. So the three components of the crystals of consciousness: the personality crystal manifests what you identify with as yourself, or who you think you are. The design crystal manifests the physicality of form, referred to as the vehicle. So you see we have this vehicle here, this limo, and we have a passenger in the back seat, and a good passenger sits in the back and just enjoys the ride. That's our personality crystal. That's our personality, our mind. We're supposed to just sit back and enjoy the ride of life. So the relationship between these two, the personality crystal and the design, is like the backseat passenger, the personality who rides in a vehicle, the design, operated and navigated by a third party, and that's the driver. So the driver is the magnetic monopole. And we talked about monopoles. That was a new discovery, that there is such a thing. And part of the information that Ra was given when he received this information included magnetic monopoles. So the magnetic monopole is the driver of the vehicle. The monopoles are particles that carry a single magnetic attraction, either a north or a south pole. The existence of such particles was confirmed, like I said, September 4th, 2009. So you can Google that and confirm it. According to the voice, the magnetic monopole is located in the sternum,
Okay.
known as the G center, and has two different functions. One, it holds us and everything together in the illusion of our separateness. As Pam, and as probably a lot of your viewers know, we really aren't separate.
Oh.
Yes, it holds us together in the illusion of our separateness. And as a magnet that only attracts, it holds the personality and design crystal together in a mystical union. And the other thing that it does is it guides us along our path, the path of our geometry in our life, and our destiny. So all life forms have a magnetic monopole, not just humans, animals, plants. All life forms have a magnetic monopole. It's located in the same place in our body. And the way that we allow that magnetic monopole to guide us in our life is by following our strategy and authority. And human design is a means by which we can follow our strategy and authority. So this is a picture of the Rave mandala, visual representation of, it's a visual representation of the human design system. And everything about human design is actually located right in this mandala.
It's really beautiful, Tracey.
Isn't it beautiful?
Gorgeous.
Yeah, you could talk for an hour about each aspect of this. So it's a 64 gate matrix of a human being. So this is the Rave mandala. So the voice I guess I should mention this. The voice I'm talking about is the voice that instructed Ra. The voice referred to the body, the human body, as a rave, or any body as a rave. And that's why it's called the Rave mandala. The Rave mandala is the synthesis of 4 ancient esoteric systems. As I said, everything in human design is grounded in this single image. It's a geometric representation, a map of how the body processes energy and information. The system is comprised of those 4 ancient esoteric systems, 4 sciences that I think I mentioned them, but we have Western astrology and the Chinese I Ching form the outer ring of the mandala. So you can see the hexagrams. That is a representation of the Chinese I Ching. And the Kabbalist tree of life form the foundation of the body graph within. So if you look at the body graph within, with all the lines, you see the body, and then you see the geometric shapes and the lines that are connecting them. That's the tree of life from the Kabbalist tradition that is represented in the body graph. So the inner wheel contains the 12 signs of the zodiac, because we use an astrological calculation in human design. So that inner wheel you can see, and I have an astrological wheel that's pointing to that. The wheel represents the universe and reveals the position of the planets at 2 different dates. The first is based on the exact time of your birth. So here I'm going to try to connect this for you so you have like an understanding of how this is all pulled together. So the first date is based on the exact time of your birth and is recorded as the personality data. So that black part, that right side of the mandala with all the numbers there. So the second is 3 months prior to birth and is recorded as your design date. And that is the red numbers on the left side of the body graph. And not this body graph, but the one that was on the prior slide and will be on the next slide.
Okay.
All around us, we have this enormous star field. So the neutrino field, right, it's constantly bombarding us. So all around us, we have this enormous star field, which generates the neutrino field, the neutrino stream. This stream is always penetrating from the star field. A kind of communication occurs during this encounter when the neutrino's tiny mass interacts with an object on its way through. For example, when the neutrino stream goes through Mars, it communicates with Mars and an exchange takes place. After being filtered by Mars, it passes through humans, and there is another, and there we have another exchange. And that, Pam, is how we are imprinted with our energy at the time of our birth, and why it's so important to know the exact date and the exact time of birth and where you were born, because that neutrino field is flowing through these planets, and to include the Earth and the sun and our moon, and those particular, the planets or whatever it's flowing through is, it's if you have a white car and you hit like a black car, you have a little bit of the black car on the white and a little bit of the white car on the black. So there's an exchange of information that takes place. So after it's filtered, it goes through Mars, after being filtered by Mars, it passes through us, and there's another exchange. It is like the example I gave, a black car and a white car. So in this way, each planet contributes its essence to the way we are imprinted with the neutrino stream. So when you look at this mandala, and that's why I'm leaving this picture up here, because you can see the whole mandala. Now, picture all around this, instead of my typing, a neutrino field streaming in. And one thing that I'm working on doing, Pam, is creating like a video of a neutrino stream that's flowing into this mandala to give like a visual of this. The baby is separated from the mother, and this neutrino, you're being imprinted at that moment that you are separated from your mother, and that is what creates your human design body graph.
Incredible, Tracey.
Isn't it incredible?
Yes.
So this is how all the planets, this is how astrology is associated with human design. So even though we all exist in this same program, right? We're all here, and traditionally we're taught to be a certain way, so we're homogenized, but really we aren't supposed to be the same. And if you think about this whole process, it's a relief to know that, oh, I don't have to be this or this, whatever my mind was telling me I had to be. I just have to be me. And there's some simple steps that I can take to help me to be me. So even though we're all exist in the same program, if you want to call it that, the unique way we manifest this program is determined by the precise moment of our birth. So this outer wheel that you see is divided into 64 sections that relate to the ancient Chinese wisdom called the I Ching, the Book of Changes. If you're not familiar with the I Ching, it's one of the first books that was ever written, and it's like a dictionary of wisdom of the seasons of life. And Ra actually wrote a book, The Complete Rave I Ching. So this is a real interesting book. I don't know if you can see it, but it is called The Complete Rave I Ching. And the basis of it is the original I Ching. It's just a more updated version. So the 64 numbered sections you can see in the outer ring represent the 64 hexagrams of the I Ching. So Each of these hexagrams around the outside of the wheel is made of a particular combination of 6 broken yin and or solid yang lines. There's 64 hexagrams, each composed of 6 lines, which makes a total of 384 line markers around the outer ring. So when this neutrino field is coming through, we're taking into account these lines as well. And I think that there is so this is a little bit more of a closer view of that. And the DNA, the 64 codons of the DNA and the 6 groups, there's 6 groups of amino acids per codon. So the DNA and the I Ching, it was discovered that they're made up in very similar ways, like the number system, the numbers that create the I Ching and our DNA are the same. So it was, I think, in the 1950s, and it was Watson and Crick. They were 2 biologists that you may have heard of, Pam, because you studied, I think you have a degree in science, right?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. So in the 1950s, these 2 brilliant people, Watson and Crick, cracked the genetic code. And it was later observed that the DNA codons and the hexagrams of the I Ching share identical binary structures.
Unbelievable.
It's just fascinating.
And didn't have training in any of this, Tracey, I don't believe. So is that correct? He had no way of knowing.
Ra? No, he didn't. He was given this information and he didn't know it wasn't I don't know if he knew about Watson and Crick and the genetic code, but the I Ching, when we're talking about that, this goes back to one of the first books ever written. So this is really old. And it wasn't until 1950s that these 2 scientists, biologists, cracked the genetic code, and it was later discovered that DNA and the hexagrams of the I Ching share identical binary structures.
Wow.
So in the I Ching, these numbers are called hexagrams. So you see the hexagrams on the outer part of the wheel here.
Yep.
And the basic binary structure of the I Ching is the yin and the yang. There's 64 codons in our genetic code, just as there are 64 hexagrams in the I Ching. The 64 hexagrams are used in human design to understand our genetic imprint and how that translates into the body graph. So we're looking at human design, and we're looking at our DNA. So they're coming together in a beautiful, clear, to me, fashion. So any questions about that, Pam, before I go on?
I think it's such a beautiful coincidence and just so interesting that Ra didn't have training in this. So it's just information that came through.
Yeah, that is the part that really drew me in. I think part of what really drew me in was that, and its relevance to not Reiki in general, but especially with Holy Fire Reiki. There's there were so many not coincidences, but similarities that it just was fascinating to me. So this is just a closer look of what that looks like. Close, and I've pretty much talked about that. So the next thing is that when we talk about the chakra system, so with the discovery of the planet Uranus by Herschel in 1981, so that's when Ra was told that this is when we stopped being 7-centered beings and became 9-centered beings. So the chakra system is a component of this system, of this synthesis. So the difference from 7 chakras to the 9 centers is a reflection of the evolutionary process. We are, as evolutionary beings, and progression, our species is meant to progress. So it's not simply an addition of 2 or more energy centers. Each center has its own energy hub. And so prior to the centers, I'm trying to move our little pictures out of the way so I can see what I have here. So prior to the 7 centers, we had 5. When we were Neanderthals, we were receptive. There was no individualities, and we had a splenic center, which is our intuition. And then we moved into 7-centered beings with a chakra hierarchy, a strategic roles, with the mind at the top. The 9-centered vehicle is your awakened body, free of that outer authority. It's our own inner authority.
Okay.
The evolutionary leap in consciousness to personal authority within oneself. And that personal authority is the essence of human design. So when we're talking about personal authority, it's one of the hallmarks of human design, your type, strategy, and authority. So just by knowing what these things are, you can make huge changes in your life. So we've been born into 9-centered bodies. All of us have been. And it was since that discovery in 1780, something about the discovery of Uranus that shifted things. And so we've all been born into these 9-centered bodies, but we're still acting. Many people are still acting like they're in these 7-centered bodies with that hierarchy design, which in many circumstances gives the authority over to an outer authority. So that is where a lot of problems come in for human beings. So the voice, and this is something that made me think of you, Pam. So the voice says that in the future, and there wasn't like a lot of information given about this, in the future, there will be 11 centers with 1 center that will communicate with animals. And it made me think of you because you are communicating with animals, and there's people that are communicating with animals. And any kind of evolutionary process takes place over a long period of time. So there's some people that are moving into that process before others are. So it just made me think of you in the holy fire, animal Reiki, how that came through. I really feel like that is part of this evolutionary process of moving into more of a 11-centered being.
Incredible.
So when you look at this, and you're part of that, Pam.
That's so cool, Tracey.
I know. You have to tell me if I'm like going over time, Pam,
We're
because
okay.
okay.
It'll take the time it takes, Tracey. We won't probably end with a meditation today because we'll end with inviting people to go check out their design.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
A little bit about the body graph. So when you're looking at your human design chart, like when you go in and you download it, you'll see more of something like this with numbers on the sides, and you won't have that whole mandala. So I just want to show you this and talk about this a little bit. So this, you can see it's an outline of a person with geometric shapes inserted into the outline. And these are the 9 centers, the energy centers in the human design body graph. So there's pathways between the shapes, and those pathways are that tree of life, the energy pathways that connect those energy centers. So together, these observations, as you're looking at them, create an energy map. And when you're looking at your own energy map. So each center operates in a unique way in each human being. So unlike in the past, when each energy center operated had the same characteristics for every person, the energy centers, these 9 energy centers, are very dependent on each individual and that neutrino stream that was coming in at the moment of your birth. That neutrino stream is determining what is active in your chart, what is activated in your chart. So only you can know how they work in your specific design. So these centers alter our life force energy as it flows through us. These centers fall into different categories. And I just think it's important to talk about this like real quick. I gave what the name of those centers are right there, and just kind of like the keynote for what the center is. But there's one manifestation center, which is the throat. So I'm just going to talk about what category each of these centers fall into. So the throat is the one manifestation center, and all energy is being moved through the other 8 centers towards the throat, where it is given a voice to manifest or communicate our individuality. So from all of the other centers, all of the energy is trying to move to our throat so we can manifest. That is how we manifest. So there's two pressure centers, the head and the root, that move energy towards the awareness centers. And I'll talk about what the three awareness centers are. So there's three awareness centers, and the pressure to know is the head. The pressure to do is the root. So you have the head and the root, which are the two pressure centers. And one is that pressure to know things, and the other is the pressure to do things, the root. So these three awareness centers are the spleen, the ajna, and the solar plexus. So I have them all labeled here just so you can see. And I probably should add this information to the presentation. I have been changing it on a weekly basis. So the three awareness centers are the spleen, ajna, and the solar plexus. Each focuses and interprets our life experiences energetically as body through the spleen, mind through the ajna, or spirit through the solar plexus. So it's an interpretation of our life experiences in an energetic way. The physicalness of us through the spleen, the mind, the thoughts, the way that our mind works through the ajna.
And the ajna is the root, right?
What was that?
The ajna is the root, or?
The ajna is up on top. It's that upside down triangle.
The head. Okay.
Yes. So
Yeah.
that is where we move our information, thoughts to that's how we move it down to the throat.
I see.
It moves through the ajna. So it is our mind. So thinking.
And then spirit was through the solar plexus, right?
And spirit through the solar plexus. That's right. That's right. So there's four motors. There's four, and those are like energy, where our energy comes from. So there's four motor centers: the root, the solar plexus, the sacral center, and the heart are the four motors. So they provide us with the energy we need to manifest our lives. So as you'll see, there's some people that have none of their energy centers defined. Generators, Pam, they all have their sacral defined, and that is what distinguishes a generator, is that their sacral is defined, and that sacral energy center is a very powerful life force energy.
Okay.
And that is why generators have so much energy, because when they were born, that neutrino field, wherever the planets were, whatever the alignment was, it activated their sacral center. Okay. And that's what makes you a generator. So there's the four motors, and so there's one identity center. And remember, I talked about the magnetic monopole. It is in the G center, which is in the center of the body graph. So the one identity center is that G center, the home of the magnetic monopole in the center of the body graph. It's our geometry. It's how we are wired to the universe. The magnetic monopole pulls life to us, towards us. So that's a little bit about, and I can add that to the PowerPoint if you want, Pam.
Yeah, it's okay. Whatever. I think you explained it really well.
Oh, okay. Now, this is the part that's really can make a difference in your life. All the other stuff that I said, if you forgot it, no worries. It starts with strategy and authority. So the purpose of strategy and authority is to bring you back to your uniqueness. So the world's population is divided by auras into these four types of human beings, each being with a different strategy and authority for how they best function without resistance. So it's all about functioning in your life, knowing how to function in your life without resistance. And at the end, I have some charts of William Rand and you and Carolyn Musial, people that I know that have a very deep practice of Reiki and are not practicing human design, because my thought before I did that was to show that by this deep practice of Reiki, especially Holy Fire Reiki, it can bring us to our authentic self as seen through human design. So in other words, the practice of Reiki will naturally bring us to behaving in a way that is correct for who we are. So strategy is a logical surrender to our form based on our individual type, and it allows our vehicle to surrender to the flow of life. And so there's 4 different types, and these are the 4 right here, and they each have their own individual strategy. So manifestors inform before they initiate action, and I'll talk a little bit more about this. Generators and manifesting generators, they fall into the same category, wait to be asked so they can respond. Projectors, and you're a generator, I'm a projector, wait to be recognized and invited. If I try to manifest something, or if I try to act like a manifester, then it probably isn't going to turn out for me. So for example, this situation here, doing this podcast with you, you recognized me and you invited me, and I have emotional authority, which I'll talk about. So I waited for clarity about that, and it felt right to me to be here and do this with you.
Lovely.
And then the 4th type is a reflector, and their strategy is to wait through the lunar cycle before making a decision. So they wait through the lunar cycle because they have no definition. None of their centers are defined. So the way that they get definition is through the lunar cycle. And we talked earlier before the podcast started about the transit system and how it can alternate what is activated in your chart. So because reflectors don't have any defined energy centers, they have to wait before making a decision through a whole lunar cycle and then make a decision after that. Luckily, not luckily, but there's only 1% of the population are reflectors, and I haven't really come across one in my own. I've seen charts for them, but I haven't come across somebody in my own circle of people that I've communicated about this with that is a reflector.
They're very rare. They're not as common, are they, Tracey?
No, not at all. And manifestors are only 9% of the population.
Wow.
So generators and manifesting generators fall underneath that, are the about 70% of the population, and projectors are about 20% of the population. So authority is one of the tools for living and making decisions. So your inner authority, your personal authority, is the source of inner guidance for making decisions as yourself, your own personal GPS. And outer authority is the realm of the mind. So liberated from this decision making, which our mind is never like our inner authority, and liberated from being that, we're able to use the uniqueness of our mind and it's in all the gifts that it holds in service to others. So our mind is really, after we follow our own inner authority, our mind is a gift to others, and it's not meant to be for our own decision making. So these are different inner authority, different types of inner authority. So inner authority guides us to our authentic self. So everyone has their own unique authentic truth. So this is where human design and Reiki, for me, converge.
Really
this is like
line
a
up.
convergence of them. These are images of different inner authorities, and it's that inner authority that brings us to our authentic self. So the solar plexus is the most prevalent one. So if you have solar plexus authority, if that means your solar plexus is defined. So if you look at this picture here, it's colored in. That means it's defined. So at the time of your birth, because of wherever the planets were, that energy was defined in your chart. So that means that you have emotional authority. So anybody that has this defined, if you go by seniority, that is the top one, the solar plexus. So if you don't have your solar plexus defined, but your sacral is defined, then that is the next one. So the way that this is here is going backwards as far as what is what is defined in your chart, creating what your inner authority is. And this next, so this is solar plexus inner authority, and just like an example. So we both have solar plexus inner authority, Pam.
Okay.
So when it's defined, it takes precedence over everything else. So it operates through an emotional wave. Waiting for clarity is the key to living in harmony. So for both of us, Pam, we are to make, before making a decision, even though you're a generator, and you're responding to life, and I'm a projector, and I'm waiting to be recognized and invited, we both, once life asked you to do something, or a person asked you to do something, or something is presented to you, and you get like a yes or a no, you then follow your emotional authority to know whether it's correct for you, because many things will come to you in life, but not all of them are going to be correct for you. And the way for you in particular to know that it's correct for you is to wait out your emotional wave. So there's no truth in the now. Spontaneous decisions are untrustworthy and not self-based. So you might be able to think of some situations in your life where you made like a split decision and it didn't turn out quite the way that you might have wanted it to, as opposed to having been in something was asked of you to do something or participate in something, and just wait out your emotional wave. And what that means is, you hear about something, like I heard about this job that I was offered recently, and I was like really excited. But since I know that I have emotional authority, I waited, and it took a couple of weeks. But once I was up and then I was down and thinking about, oh, it's a lot of travel and all of this stuff. Once I got to a spot where there was no feeling, like strong feeling one way or the other, I knew that I had clarity. So you might not ever be like totally clear, but once the emotional wave has completed, then a decision can be made either way. So by experimenting, you'll learn and understand this form of decision making and discover how powerful it can be. Does that resonate with you at all, Pam?
One thing it makes me think of, Tracy, is that I think I do that, but I know that when a decision needs to be made more quickly, I journal. And it occurs to me that I am probably journaling in order to accelerate the wave. Like in journaling,
Mm.
it then allows the wave to flow a little more quickly. For instance, in buying this house, I couldn't sleep after we saw the house, and I journaled all night while I couldn't sleep. And so by the morning, I had a decision, but I don't think I could have just relaxed and gone to sleep and come up with a decision. I think for me, I sometimes need to journal to bring the clarity. And I realize when you're talking, I must be journaling to accelerate that wave, or to maybe fully understand it a little bit better.
You're allowing it. You're allowing it. And this is what I'm talking about, Reiki, people that have a deep practice of Reiki and human design. You're allowing that wave, you're allowing that process to happen,
Yeah.
and you're doing it correctly. And your life is a example of how beautiful that can be.
Thank you.
It really is. Journaling, you're allowing the wave and it doesn't mean that you're not going to be like nervous, or if you can't sleep, that's part of your wave. And by being able to write about it and journaling about it, you're focusing it, and you're allowing that wave to express and to flow through you
Right.
in the means of words to a piece of paper, which is really powerful.
Yeah. And you are right that I usually do have to sit with something a little bit before I make a decision. Although I usually have an indication one way or another. Like I can remember learning Reiki. There were so many other energy modalities out there, and a lot of people we sometimes call Reiki the gateway where we get started in energy work, and then people become fascinated and go here, there, and everywhere. And I would just sit with everything and be like, no, I don't need to explore that. And I don't need to explore this. Oh, but I think I will explore this. And I really didn't go out there and try to learn everything. I really sat back and listened. So this is so cool.
Yeah, I think that we don't always, I know that I haven't always, and probably more often than not, I didn't follow my emotional wave or inner authority because I didn't know about it. And I did things very spontaneously. And I can look back at many times where it didn't work out too well.
I look back at this, I don't have a lot of spontaneous decisions because I guess I somehow knew that to wait. But when I have made those spontaneous decisions, you're right, they haven't worked out for me that well.
Yeah. So yes, and that's why I have you in this presentation, because you're a perfect example of how Reiki can bring us to this, our inner authority, because that's what Reiki is about
Is that
too.
inner authority? You're right.
Yes. So we all have clients that they just can't break through something, or there's some sort of barrier. And I have found that this is like just these simple ways of changing behavior can be very helpful in addition to the Reiki.
Yeah.
So sacral authority, William Rand and Carolyn Musial have sacral authority. So sacral authority, so you can see that their solar plexus is open. It's not defined, it's white, and their sacral is red. So that means they have sacral authority. So the sacral is defined without solar plexus, the domain of the generator.
Yes.
So the sacral voice or familiar aha, yes, like when somebody says, oh, do you want to go to the Reiki retreat in Sedona? So what a generator could do is wait for that sacral response. It will just be an energy welling up within them, either yes or no. It's as simple as that. And a lot of times people are not connected to their sacral energy and have to like really get used to it again and reconnect with it. So the sacral defines, so our sacral voice or familiar aha, yes, or no, is immediately heard when asked to commit your energy to something or someone. Hesitation means I don't know right now, ask again later or in a different way. So you can actually ask somebody to ask you later or in a different way. So your truth is in the present. The sacral center functions in the present moment. So this is sacral authority. You're a generator because your sacral is defined, but since you have a defined solar plexus, your authority, your type is a generator. Your authority is emotional authority. Okay. So Carolyn and William are both manifesting generators. They're both generators, but they don't have that solar plexus defined. So they're generators, and it's because their sacral is defined, their sacral is also their inner authority. Okay. So the truth is in the present, the sacral center functions in the present moment, and it's an energy that rises up within you. So to reconnect with your sacral response, find people to ask you yes or no questions and pay attention to your sacral response. So that's a little about those two types of authorities. And so I just want to just go over the types, the 4 types. So first, the generators. So you're a pure generator, Pam. Yeah. So the manifesting generators fall underneath the pure under generators as well. And I have your 3 charts here. You're on the left, and then William is a manifesting generator in the middle, and Carolyn is a manifesting generator on the right. So 70% of the population are generators. 37% are generators and 33 are manifesting generators. So your strategy is to engage with life by waiting for things to come to them so they can respond. And with you're doing this, but before you respond, you're waiting for emotional clarity.
Right.
And they'll in general end up feeling frustrated if they initiate rather than wait to respond. So they're the life force energy of the planet. They have more energy than any other type. They're designed to know themselves by observing what they respond to. And through responding, they experience satisfaction in their life and in their work, which you clearly display that. Their work their work is their gift to the world. And again, that is just you're a real great example of that, as well as William and Carolyn. If life were a soccer game, generators would be the defenders. So that, and the generator's aura is very inviting. So very soft aura, and they just really attract a lot of people to them.
Okay.
So the next one is projectors. They're the guides, and me and Karen Kaig is one of the other licensed Reiki master teachers, which I understand she's popular on your podcast. I'm glad she's in this presentation. So she's actually a projector as well. And I put both of ours here because projectors can be very different from each other. What was that?
Yeah, I'm looking at the different colors like that are defined in your charts, and you're very different.
Yes, Karen is a classic projector. And what that means is she has the G center is defined and nothing below that. The G center, the throat, and her ajna are defined. So if she was a mental projector, she would only have above the throat defined, but she has nothing below the G center defined. So she's classic projector. I'm what is called an energy projector because I have all these motors defined, the three of the motors defined. The only one that's not defined is the sacral. And if that was defined, then I'd be a generator.
Wow.
So I am what's called an energy projector. And the thing with an energy projector is you have to like remember that you're not a generator because you tend to have like more energy, and it's not your purpose for being here to be acting like a generator. And I've always had a hard time with that. So they're approximately 20% of the population, and their strategy is for engaging in life is to wait for specific qualities to be recognized and invited into things. So it can be hard to just go about your life working on whatever you're working on until you're recognized by someone and invited to do something. So a lot of projectors have a hard time with that. And most, before they learn about this, are not actually living their life this way.
You mentioned you were trying to live as a generator, but that it really kind of wore you out, I think you said, or
Yeah, it just ended up chaotic for me. And like I can remember trying to implement things in my life, some pretty big things that I thought were, and I did it to help people. I did this race, a 5K race that I organized. I was like the director of this race, and it was pretty successful. But the place I was doing it for never asked me to do it. I was never like recognized for this type of thing and invited to do it. I just took it upon myself to create it and do it. And the place that I did it for never really acknowledged it.
wow.
Yeah, so I look back at that and it makes me laugh actually, because I feel like that was an experience that I gave myself. So at this time, I could look back on that to truly understand what it means to be a projector, like not self type of projector. If they initiate rather than wait, they experience resistance and rejection, which I did. I have experienced that on like many occasions in my life. So they can end up becoming bitter. And yeah, it's true. The projector's gift to the world is to understand and be a guide for others when you're recognized and invited to do so. If life were a soccer game, then the projectors would be the midfielders going in between the generators and the manifestors, which are the initiators. So the projector's aura, I'll just talk about that a little bit. is very focused. Like people can often feel your energy, and you don't really like notice that. And I think about different relationships or people that I've met or different situations where I could look back and know that's what they were feeling, my piercing energy, which I don't have really I can't feel that in myself. So projectors are very concerned about the other and really don't focus on themselves very much. So their energy is very focused in the other.
Okay.
So manifestors are approximately 9% of the population. They have no sacral definition. They have direct connection to the throat and a motor. So direct connection from the throat to one of those three motors in the body.
Okay.
That's what creates a manifestor. And they don't have their sacral is not defined. So their strategy is to inform others of their decisions before they take action in order to eliminate resistance. So they simply have to tell somebody that they're going to be doing something, and that's what their strategy is. The hard part is if a manifestor has emotional inner authority. So they then they tell somebody that they're doing something, and then they have to wait for emotional clarity. So that is a tough one. So when manifestors cannot manifest in peace, they experience anger. So another thing that is like interesting about this and relevant to the Reiki precepts is the signposts for when we're not following our strategy and authority. And the signposts are anger, bitterness. And I thought about this, and it made me realize that this is the Reiki precepts, and how we recite the Reiki precepts. Just for today, I will not anger, I will not worry. And it is a different way in my view, it's a different way of looking at the Reiki precepts. So these signposts are like warning signs to be aware of when a person is not engaging in their decision making properly or correctly. So
you mentioned for generators, it's frustration, that we get frustrated if we're not doing it correctly.
yes, and they're signposts. So the signposts are to me, you can connect that to the Reiki precepts and what Yusui Sensei was telling his students, the way of being. So his way of being, this is another way of expressing the Reiki precepts is the signpost for these 4 types of human beings, and the signposts that we are not living according to our correct self. So when the manifestors are designed to have a powerful impact and be initiating mechanisms for the other types. Initiating is their gift to the world. If life were a soccer game, then the manifestors would be the forwards, of course. And then the last one is reflectors. They're the discerners. They're only 1% of the population, and their strategy is to wait that 21.5 days, the whole lunar cycle, because they have no definition in their energy centers. There's no fixed definition. They reflect everything around them. They change as the planets move through the universe, which to me, the whole concept of that is just really beautiful. And so you can see here that there's definition in some of the lines, but all the energy centers, there's no definition. And if life were a soccer game, the reflector would be the goalie, because they live by a different set of rules. They can touch the ball. So they're just totally different from the rest of us. And I can't wait till I come across in this this new practice that I'm engaged in. So this is kind of,
I'm going to send this to one of my students. I think there's somebody I know who's a reflector.
let me know.
I'll let you know. I'll ask him to do the chart, and if he is, I'll let you know. And
yeah, I would love that.
Deep understanding of life. But I think as a reflector, it must be difficult because it would be hard to get things done.
It's never difficult for any of us if we're following our strategy and authority.
Okay.
So that's the key. So it may look difficult, And when it's looking difficult and when it's feeling difficult and when it is difficult, always go back to your strategy and authority.
I
Am
see.
I being recognized for this? Did anybody invite me to do this?
Yeah.
And once they do, have I followed my strategy and authority? How do I really feel about this? And this is just like a composite of the 4 types: the type, strategy, their quest in life, the not self theme, and their signature. So when they are operating in their strategy and authority, the manifester feels peaceful, generators satisfaction with their life,
Yeah.
projector they feel successful, and reflectors they feel surprise, exhilarated surprise is how Ra expressed it. And then, and then this is just like their strategy and form, wait to respond, kind of like keynotes. So you can just look at that and get a overall view of each of the types real quickly. And I'm going to go to the next slide because, oh, I think I took it off. So the dark one, I have this in here. This is my mandala body graph with the mandala.
Yeah.
And I put it here because I just want to reiterate. So if you imagine this neutrino stream coming through on March 10th in Albany, New York, this whatever was happening at that time at 2:22 in the afternoon, 1422, that neutrino field was coming in a way where it activated these lines. This energy, it's coming through, and just imagine that this is the neutrino field. It's going through this hexagram, through this planet, and through me into me, and it's activating these lines and centers are activated. It's a reflection of this neutrino field flowing through all these different things here. Does that make sense, Pam?
It does, but how cool that you were born at 222 besides.
Oh,
You
yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Surrounded and protected by benevolent light beings.
Yeah, and you know what's funny is that my personality design, like when when that neutrino stream was flowing through the sun,
Yeah.
and the sun is our most important part of us because it's
70%.
70%
Right.
correct. It's flowed through 22, line 22 is what
Oh,
was activated in me.
in your personality.
Yes.
That is cool.
Yes. And if you look at the I Ching, the Rei Ching, that is the keynote for that is grace. And it's called Grace Under Pressure. And at first I was like, does
Oh,
that
yeah.
make sense?
That's you.
And do you know that ever since I started taking Reiki classes with William and just say something that you like about yourself when you had to do that, my thing that I would always say is that I always, and was always the only thing I could ever think, my go-to for
Yeah.
that question, because it's so true and it's always there. I just know it, that I always revert back to whatever has happened in my life. I've always reverted back to a place of peace and forgiveness, love for whatever it was that has happened. And when I learned about this and that being my personality sign, it just made so much sense to me. Yeah, it's pretty cool. So this is and what I did with the charts is it's not like a full like reading, of course. I am in a professional training, but I'm not qualified to do like a full reading yet, in my opinion. But what we do in class is it's like a hero's journey. And what you take one of the things we've done in class is you take the whole channel, and a channel is these are both lines,
Yeah.
gates and lines. If one of the gates is activated, then you just have the line. If they're activated in both of the centers, then you have a full channel of activation. So it's these full channels of activation that when we're talking about strategy and authority and about making decisions, it's this energy, the energy of these channel activations, that is the main energy that is helping us in life to make these decisions when we're operating in our strategy and authority. So for me, I have 3 channels that are activated. And so when recognized and invited and emotionally clear, you transmit recognition to the community, and this brings you success. I have found that to be true for myself, but the thing that I want to talk about the others more, because I can see other people a lot clearer than I can see myself.
Right.
So for Karen, this is Karen Kegg. She's here as a projector, a fellow projector, and she has 2 channels that are defined. And so when your channels are defined, that is what defines your centers as well. So it's all connected. So her channel of inspiration and organization, when recognized and invited, as you speak your truth, you not only inspire yourself, but also inspire the collective / tribe through your actions and with your gift of effectively translating detailed visual patterns into language. This brings you success. And
she's
I read
so
this, and
talented
these
with
are
language.
she is, and when I read these keynotes, and these aren't my words, I'm just taking them from the I Ching, the
Yeah.
Ray of I Ching, and it just totally describes Karen Kegg.
Oh, yes. She's so talented with language. She's an English professor. She's knows so many
Mhm.
languages. She can communicate so beautifully and so well. That makes so much sense.
Yes, and her move to
Ecuador.
Ecuador, and how she really is like an inspiration for other people by her actions. She's acting,
Yeah.
and that acting, people are seeing it. And I think it has like a really profound effect on the people that are witnessing what she's doing. That's part of her design, for
Yes.
her actions to have that effect on other people.
I love
She is living out her design. And I believe that Reiki is a big part of that brought her to that authentic self, although Karen is aware of human design as well.
yes.
Another really powerful one is William's profile. And I had asked him if I could use him.
Yeah.
So he's a manifesting generator. This was like, when I asked him, I said, I have a feeling that it's going to just show that you're reflect leadership. And it was even more profound than I realized it was going to be. He has a lot of channels defined.
Yeah.
And when you put those channels together in response through your leadership, you transmit a unique direction that will bear witness to transformation. And this is what brings you satisfaction. So we both know, and a lot of people on this planet know, that this is the essence of what he's done in his life as far as like Reiki is concerned. I don't know all the aspects of his life, but from what I've seen, this is like how I would describe William.
One of the unique things about William as a leader, not only is he a great leader, but he's similar to Yasui Sensei in that as soon as he learns something new, or as soon as a new energy is presented, the first thing that he thinks of is, this is fantastic. How can I share it with people to help others? That's the first thing, the first place he goes, even when it's inconvenient, even when other people don't. And so that makes so much sense, Tracey, and unique
Yeah,
direction that
doesn't it?
will bear witness to transformation. That's his first thing that he thinks of. I love that about him.
Yes, and it's right there. He's living his this is a picture of his authentic self.
Yes.
These are keynotes that describe his authentic self. He's
That's,
living this.
yeah,
He's fully, as far as I can see, as in Reiki, displaying this, and it's just beautiful.
I agree. I agree. Yeah.
And
Oh,
then Carolyn is another one. She has 2 channels defined, the channel of mutation and the channel of money, a materialist. And one thing about Carolyn that really made sense to me is that and I won't go into what the right angle the crosses are, but she's got the right angle cross of laws. And she has such a unique way, in my opinion, of being able of combining like laws or rule. Her position at the ICRT, she I don't even know how to put words to this, but her energy flows through in her direction to all of us at
Yeah.
the ICRT.
Yes, that's right.
And it can be felt so deeply that it's like she doesn't have to do anything. She can create change without, and just by being who she is. So when surrendering to your sacral response, you bring the energy of change to us all simply by being who she is. As you master the material plane and provide for the good of the tribe, it's just a description of her in our Reiki practice in the ICRT, and I suspect in her life in general, and in my experience with her.
Yeah. And she's really great at helping the rest of us understand
Yes.
the rules. And it's not that there's a ton of rules or anything that we have to follow, but there's enough that allow us to offer quality programs. And she helps us interpret those and understand them
Absolutely.
when we don't.
Yeah.
I don't
And
always understand them.
absolutely. And I think that in Carolyn's case, sometimes it's missed. It might be missed on people how deeply energetic that is, like how transformative that interaction with her can be.
Yeah.
I think it's so deep that sometimes people will miss it because it seems, and I think it's that writing across of the laws, something about that, where it's just so profound
Yeah.
that people might not, like, unless you're looking for it, might not actually experience it to its full depth.
That's so cool.
I love Carolyn, can you tell?
I know we all do. And she's so
Yeah,
practical.
I know. So that leads us to you, Pam. And Pam has multiple channels defined. Pam is a generator, a pure generator with emotional authority. And one other thing about Pam is that her profile is a 4-6, which is very a profile that people that are very interactive with others and the community and very good in business and making connections. And so that's the description of her profile, which definitely fits who you are. And on top of that, that the lines in our, if you look at these numbers here, the gates are the number to the left, and then it has a point and then another number, and it's the line. There's 6 lines, and that is when we were talking about the hexagram, there's 6 lines within it. And typically people have a kind of a equal amount of each, like it's dispersed. If you have maybe 6 or 7 of one particular line, that's a lot. Pam has 11 line 4s. And that is a very social being. That is a person that is really involved with the community and doing work with the community, and lots of people coming to her for whatever it is that she's providing to the community. So the way that your life has been, that I know what I know of you and how it's progressing, when I look at your chart, is just no surprise. And with all of those line 4s in your design, I imagine that you will continue to develop whatever it is that you're going into. I know, like, you're going into, I don't know if you've talked about
I
this,
have
like,
talked about politics, yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
So I just have a feeling, since you're in this deep practice, and our practices only get deeper as we move through them,
Yeah.
this is just going to grow and grow for you as you're in your Reiki practice and following your strategy and authority. And for yours, your superhero profile, in response, and when emotionally clear, you bring wisdom and unique direction through intimacy and focused attention that comes through stillness. And that just sounds so much like you from what you told me about yourself, that stillness that you actively engage in before making a decision. is a part of your emotional authority that just naturally has become a part of your being, probably due to your Reiki practice. I don't know. I'm just guessing that.
Yeah, and because I know you said it's so surprising that I never wanted to teach people, and yet I have so many people markers
Yes.
that Reiki healed that for me. And I think that's right. Yeah, Reiki brings us to our authentic self, doesn't it?
Yes, and that's what this is all about. You tell the story about you went to Stonehenge and took the master class with William, but you weren't intending to teach
Mm.
people,
Yeah.
humans. You wanted to teach children and animals, and not that children aren't people,
No, but
but
they're
you
little.
didn't want to teach adults.
No.
So on the plane ride home, I think it was on the plane ride home that Reiki spoke to you, and
Yes,
you realized that yes, you were going to be teaching
I was. I realized
adults.
for
And this is,
animals, and I loved animals, therefore I loved people.
yes, yes. I think that this is another one of the like signposts or landmarks in my own library of things that I know of that are bringing, converging Reiki and human design. That's one of the things that would be on my list, is that experience that you had and how that has progressed to what you are doing right now. You are living your design, and you started living your design before you knew about human design. It
Yeah,
was Holy Fire Reiki, taking that class with William, that brought you to that.
I think so.
So it's, to me, truly amazing.
Thank you.
You're amazing.
Aw, so are you, Tracy. Thank you.
So this is the last slide. What's your type? This is where you can find your type. Go to one of these. There's a lot of information out there that I've seen that is not the most accurate information. So when you're first starting out, if you're first starting out, I would start at one of these: Human Design America, the Jovian Archive, the International, I don't remember what that H stands for, but this last one of these links, go to one of these links for your free profile. And I take my classes through Human Design America. So my teacher is awesome. And he gave me permission to use the stuff that I used in here that is human design related, the pictures. Yaku is his name. So sending Reiki to your body graph is a catalyst for becoming your authentic self. And that is the of my presentation. So I'm going to stop sharing this.
Sure. And we're back. Tracy, thank you so much. I encourage you all to take a moment. And I know I use Jovian Archive, and we could also use Human Design America or the IHD school. But I encourage you all to go ahead and check out your own human design, and then that'll help you send Reiki and uncover your authentic self. Yeah. Tracy,
Absolutely.
thank you so much for explaining that to us. Thank you for being here today. And I just want to
Um,
thank our listeners too. Thank you so much for the
Thanks, Pam. Namaste.